Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where we say, is there anything more tasty in life than tears? The luscious, luscious taste of geek tears, especially. So anyways, I think this is going to be a particularly interesting story just to see the tears currently flowing and then to foreshadow the tears yet to come. This is awesome. This is awesome. Right, so we've been hearing this whole thing about work from home and return to office for a long time now. Here's a question I've got for you. What happens when your company moves their headquarters and then allows you to work from home? Does anybody else think there's going to be a bit of a nasty surprise somewhere in the future? Well, if our employees are too selfish to work in the office, why should they be our employees? But you moved the headquarters states and states away. Well, you know, it was closer to my yacht. So anyways, this is just a great story. This is a great story. I also think it's an interesting thing to be thinking about when we talk about the dominoes falling as the economy does whatever the economy is doing. The great economic... I don't get what's going on. I literally don't get what's going on, right? You know, COVID. COVID hit this country. Stock market tanks. Honestly, I saw the stock market tank when COVID hit, and I was like, yes, because it proved our stock market actually works vaguely sanely. And then the next month, it shot up. And then it kept going up and up and up and up and up. Okay. That's just, I don't know, maybe part of long COVID is economic insanity. Okay. But then, we have Trump come into office and, he just starts doing tariffs. Tariffs here, tariffs there, tariffs everywhere. 30% tariff, 50% tariffs, 145% tariffs. Right now apparently he has walked away from the trade negotiations with Canada. Just walked away. They're over. They're over. They will be informed how much they are paying, which isn't how tariffs work. I'll just remind you, however you feel about Trump, tariffs are a tax on the American people. That's just what tariffs are. That's just literally what tariffs are. Canada literally does not pay the tariff. Canada literally does not pay the tariffs. But anyways, right, we got this whole economic weirdness going on. The stock market, I think the S&P 500 just hit its all-time high. At the exact same time, people can't afford houses and healthcare, and we have all kinds of weird layoffs and all kinds of stuff going on. So anyways, we've got this economic going on. I don't know what it is. But one of the things I've told you is, I talked about before, is during the Great Recession, right, how the dominoes fell. All right, Bear Stearns fell, and I didn't care, because fuck Bear Stearns, right? Housing market fell, and I didn't care. Haha, dumbasses in the housing market. Right, well, 9-10 months later, then the dominoes hit me, right? I talk about the dominoes falling. Well, one of the things that I find is interesting, again, from real world talking to you folks, when I still had the sanity to talk to you folks, right? I created this thing called Silicon Dojo, right? This idea of teaching people how to solve problems. And they were like, Eli, the only problem I care about is job. Eli, how do I get a job? Okay, well, what kind of problem do you want to solve? Job. Okay, do you want to develop for mobile apps? Job. Okay, do you want to be like out in the field and doing something? Job. Okay, do you want to be in your basement all the time? Job. And one of the things I've talked about for a while is people do not want to solve problems using technology. They don't want the work of a technology professional. They want the job of a technology professional, which really means they want the paycheck of a technology professional. Right? Which, look, it is what it is. I'm not sure how that works at the end of the day, but as we have proven time and time again, I'm not sure how a lot of stuff works in the modern world. But the interesting thing, right, is we have all these people that want to get in the tech industry, not to solve problems, not to make the world a better place, not because they have an itch that they want to scratch, but because they want jobs. So we think about the dominoes falling, right? As these big tech companies stop hiring people, as these big companies do layoffs, as these big tech companies start doing more and more buyouts, right? Hundreds of thousands of tech employees are being dumped onto the market, and they are getting a rude awakening about how the economy actually functions. So what becomes interesting there is what happens if your business, your multi-billion-dollar business, is tech education. Not free to the end user tech education, but pay me tech education. What happens when people no longer feel that they can get jobs in the technology industry to your tech education business to help people get jobs in the tech industry, right? Another domino falling. And that's where we talk about Pluralsight. And I don't really actually have a lot of snarky stuff to say about Pluralsight. What? It's true. I don't know, Pluralsight was fine. I used Pluralsight for a while. I don't really have any bad things to say about Pluralsight, but they are currently getting scooshied by the dominoes falling. And the curious thing that they're now doing is not only are they laying off employees, but then they moved their headquarters. And then all their old employees that were at their old headquarters are now remote working to their new headquarters. Oh, and I feel like the snarkiness is gonna come. I have not, in the past, been snarky about Pluralsight. I do feel like in the future, I will be very snarky about Pluralsight. So anyways, coming from Salt Lake Tribune, because they were in Utah, they were a successful Utah company, a billion-dollar, a unicorn Utah company. Where? They moved. Pluralsight, once a Utah unicorn, is leaving the state after another round of layoffs, right? The company is establishing a new headquarters in another state. And I find this to be fascinating, because again, I'm not creative enough to create stories about how brutal all this stuff is going to be. Like this is not my imagination. This is where I just explain to you the real world of our industry, and then you cry, and then I try to catch your tears on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, Pluralsight is reinventing itself again. The digital training platform for tech skills laid off roughly 17% of its global staff Tuesday, a spokesperson confirmed. The resizing many impacted employees on LinkedIn called it is part of a broader structural change happening at one of Silicon Slope's most high-profile tech companies. Another part of its transformation is leaving its home state. Pluralsight, which had been based in Draper, is, quote, establishing a new headquarters in Westlake, Texas, according to a statement from CEO Aaron Gajaldo. Its Utah workers, the ones that survived Tuesday's layoffs, will keep their jobs and work remotely, according to the statement. Oh, can you see the brutality coming? I can see the brutality coming, right? So basically, They dump 17%. They lay off 17% of their employees. That is as it is, right? Anyways, but then they're moving their headquarters. But all the employees that they had that were working at the old headquarters are now going to be doing remote work. We all know what's coming in the next couple of months, don't we? They start ditching remote workers, and like, well, if these people refuse to work in the office, I mean, what are we supposed to be? These low performers who are too lazy to come into the office. You expect us to pay them? We see what path we're on. Let's see here. Quote, Utah is where Pluralsight was founded more than 20 years ago, and we are grateful to the state for the important role it played in Pluralsight's history, the CEO said. Quote, as we focus on the growth and sustainability of our business, we determined that a new and right-sized headquarters is in the best interest of Pluralsight. Employees were offered severance. Dozens of impacted employees shared the news on LinkedIn. One said she had worked for Pluralsight for more than 11 years and survived every previous round of layoffs, including one in 2022. 2022 that eliminated 20% of its workforce. And so one of the big things to be thinking about Pluralsight is at one time, this seemed like a real player. This seemed like a big company that was going to go somewhere. It was actually worth, valued at over $1 billion at one point. The new CEO took the helm in November 2024 after several turbulent months at Pluralsight. Founder Aaron Sconard stepped down as CEO in April of 2024 and left the company. Chris Walters, his replacement, lasted less than 6 months before the company announced new owners and a new business structure, neither of which included Walters as the company leader. The company's new owners, a conglomerate of lenders led by Blue Owl Capital and referred to online as the Investor Group, agreed to buy out some of the company's debts in exchange for control of its operations. Over the past year, we have been transforming our business to position the company for sustained growth and to enhance the value we provide to our customers, the CEO said. Quote, to our team members, partners, and customers in the Salt Lake area and Utah more broadly, let's see here. We remain fully committed to serving you with excellence, and we expect our total employee population in the state to remain consistent. After becoming a unicorn, a private startup valued at over $1 billion, the company briefly went public in 2018. Its 2 years on the stock exchange were defined by loss, roughly $164 million per year, and Vista Equity Partners bought it for $3.5 billion in 2021. Under Vista Equity, the company implemented several rounds of heavy layoffs. In May 2024, Vista Equity wrote off Pluralsight's entire equity value as Blue Owl took over operations. So, yeah, that's what we got. So we got a high rolling, one of these unicorn tech companies comes out of Utah. They get to be valued over $1 billion. They go on the stock market. They start losing money. They get bought out by private equity. Then they get bought out by an investors group. Layoffs here, layoffs there, layoffs everywhere. Now they just do 17% of the staff get laid off, and they move their headquarters for some reason to right-size your headquarters in Texas. That's a new one. That's a new one. I'm not sure I've ever heard that one before. Like I've heard a lot of weird excuses for like moving companies or whatever, but right-sizing your headquarters to Texas. What does that actually mean? I don't know. Inquiring minds would like to know, and this one does not. And so all of their staff that are in Utah will now be remote workers. And yeah, I think we can all see the bloodbath that will be coming. I do wonder with this if we are going to start to see more of these tech companies go to Texas because their legal framework there may allow them to be much more bastards than where they currently are. This is one of those things to be thinking about with these corporations, right? When you create your articles of incorporation, your company becomes an entity, it becomes a person, right? And so in different states, they deal with those entities differently. So one of the reasons why a lot of folks go to Delaware is that Delaware has had their corporate law for hundreds and hundreds of years. So one of the nice things about Delaware is that basically, since so many corporations were created in Delaware, they just have an incredibly efficient, reliable system for dealing with business disputes. The issue with Delaware is, that they might actually be rather fair and balanced with those disputes. And so the problem becomes, essentially, if you're a CEO, is do you want a balanced arbiter when you have issues with your employees, your vendors, or whatever else? Or do you want somebody that is going to basically take your side? And so one of the interesting questions with a lot of this movement into Texas is the idea that Texas is more, it's weird how they say this. It's weird how they say it. They say it's like business friendly. It's more like business owner friendly. So the idea is you move your corporation there, and then the legal framework there is more likely to basically side with you in legal cases. And so what'll be interesting to see going in the future is how many more of these corporations move to Texas for that protection from the people that may harm them. And what will that look like, in our industry? Like we talk about that with culture. And so not only when you create a company is the internal culture you create important, but it's also one of the things to understand is the external culture is going to affect your internal culture, right? So we saw this with a lot of the tech companies during the Biden administration. This seemed to disappear real quick, but right, they highly supported the LGBT community. They highly supported the trans community. They highly supported BLM. They weren't actually, funding affordable early childhood education or figuring out housing or anything, but, they had flags or fists or whatever else, right? And that's one of the things. And so a lot of the people in California with these corporations is you have this external culture that supposedly cares, I will put cares in quotation marks, cares about social justice. So a lot of the social justice then seeps into the businesses, and then the businesses start kind of mirroring, right? So a curious thing, as I've said before, is most of the people that run these technology companies are just out and out bastards. And as I say that, I don't actually say that with snark the way I used to. Maybe we need bastards. I don't know. I've been on this planet for a little while at this point. Maybe you need evil people. Maybe you need evil people to move the world forward. Anyways, but the truth of it is most of them are just garbage. Most of them are human trash. What they've done is they've been able to monopolize key aspects of the modern society, and then they are rent seekers on those key aspects. That's what they're doing. They're not visionaries. They're not whatever the hell they say they are. They're basically rent takers, right? And so one of the curious things to be thinking about is as our culture overall changes. You've seen Trump come in, and one of the curious things is how hard and how quick these tech companies have pivoted, like weirdly, right? Mark Zuckerberg, heavily pivoting, with dealing with Anduril right now, $30 billion contract for warfighters and that type of thing with Exar. You see so much of what's going on in Silicon Valley, pivoting, again, as I would say, to poodles pissing on themselves, pretending to be alpha dogs, right? And so one of the curious questions then is if you have these wannabe masculine folks running these technology companies, they were never good to begin with. They were always pieces of garbage that happen to monopolize a key component of our society. As we see this shift in the overall culture of the country, is that then going to push a shift for a lot of these tech companies to then go to places like Texas, where they will then be more protected in Texas? And what does the tech culture look like? What does a Texas-centered tech culture look like versus a California-centered tech culture? It'll be curious to see how this goes. As I talk about getting my MCSE back in 2000, the military and all that, if you go back 20, 25 years, so many people that were in the tech world were veterans, ex-military, that type of thing. You went to work to pay the mortgage. You went to work to pay the mortgage. That was the culture. Paying the mortgage was the culture. Right? You fast forward 15, 20 years, I'm not even sure what the culture is, right? I'm gonna go protest the company on company time, and they're going to pay me a salary while I do it. I just don't understand. I don't understand, right? But that's the culture we've had for somewhere between 5 to 10 years. So as more companies start moving to shifting to Texas, how will that fundamentally shift the culture for these companies? And for a lot of people out there, they're like, yeah, fuck the blue hairs. Blue hairs gonna get what they deserve. Understand, this country, blue collar, hardworking people, those what created the middle class were protections, right? There were a lot of government protections that created the America that a lot of folks want to get back to being great, right? You think about Make America Great Again. Are you thinking about 1850 or 1950? If you think about I'm just going to put it out there with Make America Great Again. If you're thinking about the 1950s, there were a tremendous number of federal regulations, taxes, everything else to create that great America that you want to return to. And so maybe shredding all of that policy, the bare bones policy that we still have, might not be a great idea. But anyways, that's just my thought. What do you think about this? What do you think about Pluralsight? Have you used Pluralsight in a while? What do you think about these companies? Right? If you're focused on if the idea that you're selling is that people will be able to get jobs in this field, those jobs are dissolving. How do you feel about companies like Pluralsight and all that, trying to do tech education and that type of deal? And at the end of it, what do you think about a company picking up its headquarters, moving a couple of states away, and then saying, oh, all of the old employees are now going to be remote workers? Am I just a cold-hearted bastard, or does that seem like foreshadowing to anybody else? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below, and with that, see y'all later.